it's your host, Glyph, and welcome to my new web series, If You Had to Do a 30-Minute Presentation. This is inspired by a trend that was sort of a thing on TikTok. People were like, oh my god, if you had to do a 30-minute presentation unprepared, what would you do your presentation about? And it was basically just a way to share, different things that you were interested in, different things that you knew a lot about. I always felt a little bit left out in that trend because if I had to do a 30-minute presentation about something, I could not decide what the topic is. Because there's so many things that I could ramble about for 30 minutes, because I have ADHD, which means I can bring a lot of things that are semi-relevant into a presentation, and it's still, decent. So this was originally going to be a podcast that I was going to make, and I was like, but I don't really want to make a podcast, and I don't even know where I'd upload it, because I'm not uploading shit to Spotify. So I was like, hey, why don't we just, make this a web series, and then I get 5 minutes to make a presentation, which at first I was like, but that sort of defeats the whole purpose. But in the process of thinking up the idea for the podcast that I was going to make about this, I was like, well, I'm not recording this, and I'm not playing out whole episodes in my head beforehand. So obviously what I'm doing is I'm making lore. So the lore I've decided for this is, it is set in a backrooms type situation. I'm basically in this office, and there's people that they need presentations all the time. They don't care what the presentations are about. They just have to be at least 30 minutes long. And you get 5 minutes to prepare your presentation, and that's it. I'm nervous to begin recording this. First of all, because I want to do YouTubing, but I'm not used to recording myself. And so I'm nervous. Also because I am a bit anxious about the space on my laptop. I did the math though. I should be fine. If I'm not fine, I'm gonna have to explode someone, I think. But yeah, anyway. I think the best thing for me to do right now is to just start. So I'm gonna have a 5-minute timer on my phone. I'm just gonna make a presentation, and you guys are gonna see a time lapse. If I manage to make a time lapse, we're gonna see. So yeah, be right back in 5 minutes. I'm assuming you can see. Okay, now I am done. Okay, that's the timer. Jesus Christ. More anxiety-inducing than I imagined, and definitely less time than I thought. I have to be honest, I've been thinking about this, for, just thinking about this bit of yesterday, bit today. So I had a plan in mind. I did not follow this plan. So without further ado, I'm gonna actually set a 30-minute timer here, so that, we get a little frame of reference for how things are going. Therian masks, a common DIY craft. So, what are therian masks? Therian masks are these things that a lot of people have been making. Most notably, you'll find a lot of teenagers making them on YouTube Shorts, and they're these cardboard mask bases that look like a little cat face. Sometimes you find different bases in plastic. The most common ones that are used are ones that look like this image right here. Um, where you got a little snout, two little eyes, little cat ears, and it has just a simple thin elastic band around the edge. It's often decorated to look like all kinds of different animals. Of course, there are people that decorate these to look like cats. There are people that decorate these to look like dogs, otters, pretty much anything you can imagine. So a lot of kids are going around, they're buying these sort of masks, and they're just DIYing them in all different kinds of ways to make different kinds of animals. Um, there's a few different styles of these masks. I didn't want to include any pictures, first of all, because I had only 5 minutes to prepare this presentation. And second of all, because I don't want to unfairly use anyone else's art. Um, but yeah, when you make these styles, there's different, or when you make these masks, there's different kinds of styles that you can go for. Some people tend to go for more realistic styles, while others prefer to go more cartoonish. The realistic styles, you'll often see them using more fall fur, and they'll be doing a lot of heavy modifications to the mask. The cartoonish styles, you know, they can also have heavy modifications on the mask, but a lot of them tend to keep it a bit simpler. I'm gonna go a bit more into detail about all of this, don't worry. Because common modifications, there's a lot of altering the base that gets done. I don't know if you can see my cursor. I can only hope that you can see my cursor. Is there a mode for drawing on here? I don't know. Okay. But yeah, a lot of common modifications on these masks include, if you want to go for a simpler style, a lot of people will just make the eyes a bit wider. A lot of people tend to alter the shape of the mouth so that you get more of like a kitty lip, looks more like the cat smiling emoticon, you know, where you got the colon 3. Sometimes, even while doing simple modifications, some people will take a piece of cardboard that they'll just like sort of trace the shape of the ears on the mask, and they'll trace a somewhat bigger shape and just glue that on so that the ears are bigger, but they don't do any massive modifications to the ears themselves. If you want to go a step over that, people will entirely cut off the ears. They'll add a little piece of cardboard or EVA foam where the ears used to be, and they'll make entirely new ears. It's very normal to use just like bits of cardboard that you put felt on as the ears. It's also common to take, for example, wire and sort of attach that to faux fur so that you get not only a fluffy ear, but an ear that is also bendy. Um, this is especially common with masks that are more supposed to resemble dogs, because then you can get the ears either floppy style or standing up. It's also common to add modifications to the snout. For example, cutting out the original snout and adding long bits of cardboard to get a longer snout that can, for example, resemble a wolf, a fox, a dog, anything of the likes. Some people also do modifications even if they do just a cat snout. This might be because they don't really like the shape of the original snout, or just because they have a specific vision in mind. It's also very common to do, like, not only widening the eyes, but doing, like, fun eye shapes. You'll see a lot of masks that have one round eye and then one eye that's, like, sort of like one of those alligator, mouth, symbols, or, like, a V on its side, as if the mask is, like, winking at you. It's common to see masks that have, like, one eye on the side and then two eyes on the other side. Sometimes you'll see a mask that has stars for eyes. Sometimes you'll see more unique shapes, like um, a normal sleek looking eye that has like little ridges or bumps at the bottom. People get really creative with this, and it's just really cool to see all the different eye shapes that people can make. Some people actually prefer to make the eyes thinner than the original mask. It all comes up to preference. There's a lot of different things that you can do, even with just modifying the base. Um, some people also just completely disregard this cardboard base and just make their own bases completely from scratch, either using cardboard or EVA foam. Um, Another common modification is a lot of people will add felt or faux fur to their masks. They tend to do this because it gives the mask a bit of a fluffier look. When you're making a therian mask, you're most likely trying to replicate the look of a certain animal, and most animals have fur, which means that they require a sort of fluffy look. So adding felt or faux fur is very common for that. If you're going for a more cartoonish style, you're most likely going to be adding felt, but if you're going for a more realistic style, you're most likely to be adding a lot more faux fur. When you add faux fur, it's very common to like shave it down to certain lengths in certain areas, in which case, and the Therian mask community is very serious about this. It is important to wear the proper protection, which is like, a proper mask so that you don't breathe in any of the fibers, because that's bad for you. But yeah, more realistic masks tend to go for the faux fur. Some cartoonish masks also tend to go for a combination of felt and faux fur. It all depends on the look that you're trying to get. Some mask makers will do this thing where they'll have like sort of the ears sticking out. They'll have a fold for the ear, and inside the ear they'll add little fluffy fur. Some people will cut that fluff out of cardboard, then felt that, and then glue that in, so that you get a very cartoonish look. However, a lot of others will take bits and pieces of either faux fur or little wefts of yarn that they've brushed out, so that you get a fluffier look. Like more authentic, where you can see the fibers and you can like move it like actual fur. It's also very common that whenever you're doing the eyes, that you add some kind of mesh or buckram. This is also very common when you make fursuits. It's this sort of see-through kind of thing, like a fabric with a lot of holes in it, that allows you to add a design so that you can have sort of like more animalesque eyes, rather than just like your human eyes looking through, while you're still able to see through. This does obscure the mask wearer's vision a little bit, but most people don't seem to mind, and if you're good at what you do, it should be pretty see-through anyway. A lot of people also tend to line the back, which is a step mostly done for comfort, in which you take some sort of comfortable fabric and you just glue it to the back of the mask, just so that it's a bit softer than the cardboard or plastic is. A lot of people also tend to cut the elastic band off the mask and add their own elastic band, because those masks are typically made for children, um, which means that they are made to be decorated and then worn once or maybe twice. Um, Also, most usually by a child, which means the elastic can sometimes be a little bit tight on those masks, and it is very thin, um, meaning it can wear out very quickly. As someone who has used a lot of those kinds of masks for a while, I can confirm that the thinner elastic really wears down after a while and just gets too loose, so people add thicker elastic to prevent that problem. I feel like I had something else that I was going to add on, which I have now forgotten, so that's a shame. Moving on. For decorations, it's very common to paint or color these masks in some way. People don't like just leaving them plain. And when they do this, it's the most common methods I've seen personally for decorating these kinds of masks is either using acrylic paints or using eyeshadow. The people who use eyeshadow like using eyeshadow because it gives like a very soft, very blended look. You're capable of adding things up without like you can layer a lot of color on there without the fur necessarily getting hard. Um, but one common problem with that is that if you don't use proper sealant, it can smudge if you touch it too much. So, very important for those who use eyeshadow is that you seal it properly after you're done so that it doesn't smudge anymore. Uh, those who use acrylic paints are very accessible to people. You know, you can get them very cheap, and with I have a lot of experience with acrylic paints at least, and in my experience, you can mix colors a lot better than you can with eyeshadows. Um, so some people use acrylic paints, especially if they're trying to do a more cartoony style, because it allows them to sort of have more definition between the colors. If you're, for example, doing a mask in eyeshadow, it's very hard to have one half bright pink and one half bright blue without them sort of blending in the middle. If you prefer or if you use acrylic paints, what you can do is you can paint one half bright pink and then wait for that to dry, then paint the other half bright blue, and then it doesn't blend at all. However, blending acrylic paints on therian masks isn't as much of a problem as blending them is on normal canvas or paper, because if you use felt or faux fur, then the acrylic paint will stay wetter for longer, which gives you more time to blend. Now, some drawbacks to using acrylic paints on felt and faux fur is that if you don't do it right, it can turn out hard. If you want it to be hard, if that's your intention, then that is a-okay. No problems there. However, if you're going for a realistic mask style and you're using faux fur, you don't want that becoming hard at all, because then it's gonna lose its realism and it's not gonna look as nice. So what is important that you do then is that you mix in a bit of fabric softener with your paint. It should be about a 50-50 ratio. Basically, this just means that when the paint dries, it doesn't entirely stiffen up the fabric or the fur, uh, which means that if you're making a realistic mask, you can then brush the fur out, and it will look a little patchy after you do that, so you kind of have to do 2 layers, but it's an easy fix, honestly. But if you're just, getting a cardboard mask and you're not adding any fabric or fur to it at all, then you can just paint on it as normal, and it's all fine. People also tend to use alcohol markers. I don't see people using them directly on the masks as much. However, it is very common if you have a mask that's like partially felted, as they say, and partially has faux fur on it. People will often take alcohol markers to dye the faux fur, because then you get like sort of it's easier to do that than to use acrylic paint mixed with fabric softener, because it just like sort of naturally stains the faux fur. And you don't have to worry about transfer, you don't have to worry about whether or not it's gonna turn out lumpy and ugly, and you don't have to worry about having to touch it up a second time. So a lot of people will just color their fall fur in with marker before they glue it on. It's also, I see some people use airbrushes, but they're not as common to use. This is because airbrushes have a bit more of a learning curve. However, they seem like they have both the benefits of eyeshadow and acrylic paints at the same time. They give a really soft look, which is very good if you're going for a more realistic look on your mask. But you're also able to go over them again, like with different colors, if you're not happy with how things look. If you use tape, you can get the harder lines if you need that. And it doesn't make things hard at all. Which, yeah, if you don't if you want a soft mask, then you need things to stay soft. So yeah. People also tend to add charms a lot. They add like they add little earrings often. The earrings can be made out of, for example, soda tabs or just wire. People often attach charms to that. They add. There's a lot of decorations you can add. Some people like to add little magnetic things. They'll put a magnet somewhere in the mask, and they'll make a little decoration that also has a magnet. You can, like, for example, make a little fluff for the mask's forehead that you can take on and off. You can add like a little fishbone charm for your cat mask. Really, the imagination here, it's just incredible. There's so many different things that people can do. I see a lot of people add antenna to their masks, which is very creative. People will add like magnetic eyelids and magnetic tongues, and for people who have problems with looking through mesh, people can add magnetically removable mesh, meaning that you can at any point decide to wear your mask with or without mesh. Now, who uses therian masks? Anyone can use therian masks, but given that they are often referred to as therian masks, of course it is a given that therians will use them. Therians are people who spiritually, on some level, identify as an animal. This might be, someone who believes that in their past life they were, for example, a cat or a fox or literally any animal. It can be someone who believes that they have the brain of a bird and the body of a human. It can be someone who believes that in a future life they will be reborn as a dolphin. It can be anything, so long as they feel a spiritual attachment to an animal of some sorts. Therians either use their masks for fun, just because it's fun to dress up, or sometimes it can be to alleviate species dysphoria, which is like when you feel sort of dysphoric about looking like a human instead of looking at whatever animal you identify as. So if a dog therian is feeling dysphoric about looking like a human, they can wear a dog mask, and that can help. Other paws and other hearted, that is like general people who feel some sort of attachment to animals, but not in the therian way. And just like general non-humans. That includes anyone who's like otherkin, alters in systems, just anyone who at some level doesn't fully identify as human. Um, it can also be, for furries if they don't want to wear a full fursuit, or just people who like to dress up in general. Um, therian masks don't have to be a serious thing. They are most often just silly, and they're very often worn alongside fall fur tails or yarn tails. And I am also realizing that I'm missing like 10 minutes of my presentation, of which I don't entirely know what to talk about. It's very hard to make a presentation when you only have 5 minutes to do it. But yeah, we can go back to some of this stuff. There's lots of different kinds of modifications that I've seen. I wanted to mention a bit about the process earlier, and I forgot. Yeah, so typically when you make a therian mask, the first thing you'll do is base modifications. This will include cutting off any parts that you don't want on your mask, adding on any additional parts that you want to your mask, and some people do it in like slightly different orders. But essentially, the first step is you modify the base of the mask to look however you want it. Then either you add the ears and then you felt it, or you felt it and then you add the ears. People have their own preference on how they like doing that. It doesn't really matter, just so long as you're happy with the end result. Personally, I fully modify the base and add the ears before I felt. But some people might felt the ears separately because they find it hard to felt the ears and the mask at the same time. Some people might not felt the ears at all and make the ears entirely out of faux fur, and thus want to add the ears after the base of the mask is felted. Um, it just depends on preference, really. The reason I prefer to felt the ears alongside the mask is because if I don't, then I'll end up with a small seam between the ears and the rest of the mask, which it's not the end of the world. It's just a small detail that I would rather not have in my mask. Again, that's just personal preference. Um, I am also able to do this because I don't actually use felt when I felt my mask. I personally use fleece, which is a stretchier fabric. Again, this is just the standard kind of variation that you have to expect from the therian mask maker community. Um, but since I use fleece, which is a bit stretchier, that means I have an easier time felting things without them getting crinkled up. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention is that a lot of these masks rely heavily on the use of hot glue. People tend to use hot glue because it sticks both to the mask and to any faux fur or felt or fleece that they use. At the same time, it dries quickly and it holds really well. So you get these really sturdy masks. So anytime anyone adds EVA foam or cardboard to their masks, they will most likely be using hot glue. Anytime they add felt or faux fur to their masks, they will again be using hot glue. A lot of charms wind up being attached with hot glue. Sometimes there's a bit of sewing involved, but I see a lot of people who just entirely skip the sewing step, if there would be a sewing step, in favor of using hot glue. For example, if like anyone who makes ears out of faux fur, they'll usually take two different pieces that are the same shape but mirrored, and they'll attach them together so that they have faux fur on both sides. And um, if I were to do that, I would have sewn the pieces together by hand. However, a lot of people tend to just opt to use hot glue, which seems to work just as well and be a lot quicker. And then there was another thing that I wanted to add that I'm blanking on again. Uh, ah, um, some people also, instead of using only cardboard for their modifications, tend to use, like, sort of foam clay, which is, like, a light air-dry clay, that, you know, they often use it to add some shape or dimension, adding like little bumps for eyebrows, or smoothing out the parts between the cardboard and like any cardboard or EVA foam parts that they've added on and the natural mask. Because if you have too much of a separation there, then that's going to be visible when you felt it, and if it's visible when you felt it, it's going to be visible when it's painted, which means it's always going to be visible. So some people fill in those gaps with hot glue, some people fill those in with EVA foam. I meant to say foam clay, but yeah, some people do use EVA foam or cardboard to ease the transition. It's it's all up to preference. It's really just up to preference. A lot of people, when they make the masks, also, um, when they make the snout, they'll add some sort of nose. Instead of just painting it on, they'll have some sort of 3D aspect for it, um, which it's very common if you make a cat mask to just cut a nose out of felt and just color it the way you color the rest of the mask. However, a lot of people, especially if they make things like tigers or dogs or wolves or anything with a bigger nose, they'll use polymer clay, um, or, again, EVA foam. Some people use those small plastic pellets that you melt, and then you can shape them. Um, and they will wind up making a nose that either looks cartoony or looks realistic, whatever's their preference. Then they'll let it dry, however, dry or cure however it needs to. Then they'll attach it with hot glue, and I haven't seen anyone use eyeshadow or acrylic markers on those kinds of noses, because I don't think the material takes well to that. So I think most people use acrylic paints on that. However, there's definitely someone out there who doesn't do that, and kudos to whoever that is, because I must imagine that's hard. Um, so yeah, you'll kind of start off with the base modifications, you'll fleece it or felt it however you need to, you'll decorate your mask however you like, usually with paints. Whenever you do, the lighting of the thing is very up to whoever's making it, like, just their personal preference. Same goes with when you add the mesh. If you add the mesh, um, there's a lot of, like, differences in the way people add mesh, because that's one of the materials that's a bit harder to locate. So it just depends on what's available to people. And one more modification that some people do that you might see around, is they'll modify the base however they want, or just leave it as is, and then they'll cover the whole thing entirely in duct tape, at which point they'll go about it as normal, um, and after they're done, they'll spray it down with some water-resistant sealant, which means that it will be entirely waterproof. Since a lot of these mask bases are cardboard, that means that if they get soaked in water, they're most likely just going to they're going to entirely deform, which isn't good for the mask. And, like, you could dry it carefully, but it's not certain that it's going to recover. Um, but when you cover it in duct tape, that means that water can't get in. Um, so that will essentially make a waterproof mask. It's still important to let it dry fully, because if you don't, then it could, like, develop mold. Um, but that's, a really fun modification. You don't see it often, but that's still something that people do. which is really fascinating, and it all just goes to show that the therian community, or just the mask maker community in general, is really, really creative. There's so many different ways that all of these people dress up as different animals. There's so many different ways that they decorate these different masks. There's the alarm. So that is 30 minutes. Yeah, there's just so many different things that these people can do with a simple cat mask base. It's so impressive to see how people do this, either following tutorials or doing something entirely from scratch, no matter if they use a base or if they trace something, or just there's so much creativity going on absolutely everywhere, and it's just so beautiful. And yeah, that's a little bit about therian masks. And I hope you enjoyed. I survived the episode clearly. And if you made it so far, I hope you survived too. If you like this video, please consider leaving a like. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Also, if you're interested, you can find me on Tumblr at marius-vonraum or teacup-captor. The first one is my main account, the second one is my arts account, so anything I make goes there. And yeah, if you liked the video, let me know, and I might just do another. Thanks for watching. Bye!